Welcome to the official podcast of FOR ETERNIA.com. We have the power. I'm your host, AJ, aka Voodoo Magic, aka Zor, and today's episode is titled 40 Years of Power, a title selected in celebration of the iconic 1983 animated series, He-Man and the Masters of the Universe, that was produced by the legendary animation company Filmation and celebrated its 40th anniversary just a few months ago. With 130 amazing episodes of audio, visual, and life lesson splendor, and a Christmas special, and a spin-off sister series, pun intended, to boot, this He-Man show, this lightning in the bottle, captivated so many children's imaginations, including mine, and simply created permanent keyframes in our hearts, in our spirits, in our lives, that still, as adults, we have been animating in between ever since. Now, several months back, FOR ETERNIA.com asked this great community to tell us their favorite Filmation He-Man and the Masters of the Universe episodes. Well, those answers have been compiled, and the top 10 episodes chosen by fans will be revealed today on this podcast. And who better to celebrate this top 10 list, this landmark of a cartoon, and this 40th anniversary achievement with one of the legendary creators behind He-Man and the Masters of the Universe himself. He's a writer. He was a storyboard artist and known in the community as just a overall swell guy. Yes, he's one of the wizards behind the Filmation curtain, Robert Lamb. Rob, it's an honor so much to have you on. Welcome.
Thank you, AJ. It is an honor to be here.
So Rob, can you believe it? I mean, can you believe it? It's been 4 decades. 40 years later, and we are still talking Filmation's He-Man and the Masters of the Universe cartoon. And you've become a living legend. So how cool is that?
Well, for one thing, it was completely unexpected. At the time we were working on, after the show premiered, we knew we had a hit on our hands. But this was before internet, before social media and all this. So we could only gauge it by Nielsen ratings, by some fan letters. We would get actual letters would be sent to the studio. But we had no idea the impact it was having on the viewership, on the kids that were watching the show. That came as a surprise years later when I did go online looking up, trying to find some of my Filmation friends and discovering the world of He-Man fandom. That was a complete surprise.
Yeah. I guess, Bustatunes, his review site, He-Man.org became huge. And there's so much love for this show. And to me, as a young adult, or as a young viewer, I'm not a young adult anymore, I wish, but as a young viewer, now adult, the best word to describe He-Man and the Masters of the Universe is magical. It was truly one in a million to me. It had such a magical charm, the kind of charm that you can't reproduce if you tried. The lightning in the bottle sang, the music, the sounds, the animation models, which I think was an improvement of the figures, the voice talent, and the talent all behind the scenes, like yourself. All the right people somehow came together at all the right time and created this once in a lifetime cartoon that for so many of us really hasn't been surpassed to this day. Some may, be quick to only credit the toys, but personally, I credit, this series, this show, He-Man and the Masters of the Universe, a counterpart to those vintage toys, as the huge reason, or dare I say, main reason that this fandom still exists like it does, and the love for this brand is still thriving today.
Well, I'll have to say I do agree with you. Originally, Mattel was looking for a TV production that would help promote their toys. That originally, if you know the history, Mattel had originally licensed a Barbarian toy line for Conan the Barbarian movie with Arnold Schwarzenegger, until they found out it was an R-rated movie.
Very R.
Yes, and so they said, "Oh, that won't do for our primary audience, our customer base." So they were looking for a TV studio that would be doing a Barbarian cartoon, and we had done Black Star in 1981.
Right.
At the same time, Ruby Spears had done Thundar the Barbarian.
Great show.
And they looked at both series, and both are good, but they preferred how we did Black Star. They liked the look of the show, and so that began the negotiations in 1982. And from the outset, from Mattel's point of view, they were looking for a 30-minute commercial. And Lou Scheimer, the president of Filmation, said, absolutely not. If we do this, it's going to be done for story content. We will use as many characters as it is reasonable to use, and we will try not to, make characters do things that they wouldn't do, that out of sync with the toys. But, and I love this quote, what he said basically to Mattel: we won't tell you how to make your toys. You don't tell us how to make the cartoons.
Yeah.
And that is one of the reasons why I think it really worked well, because it was kind of a perfect storm. The right ingredients. The show would have done well if the toys did not exist. If we had just come up with it ourselves, it would have done all right. The toys would have done okay if the show wasn't there. But because of them both being united, they were together, had the show with the stories, with the character development and all that, 5 days a week. And you had the opportunity to buy the toys. And a lot of the kids would have their toys with them from the TV set. Mm-hmm. And it just was the right combination, the right mix. And that's why I think it had such a deep impact at the time that still resonates with fans today.
I was, looking at it as an adult, I mean, I'm kind of shocked that in regards to the deal that Lou Scheimer was able to negotiate. I mean, what a great deal. I mean, this seems like something that would be unheard of today,
Mattel did not make that mistake again. with other productions, other things, they put in the contracts, we have absolute control over everything. I had friends that were working on G.I. Joe around the same time, and they would complain because Hasbro had total script control. And they told them, we are making a 30-minute commercial. So the whole point of this show is to sell these toys. So we want as many of the characters on screen at the same time, all the time. And if G.I. Joe's team has to go from point A to point B, we need to use at least 3 different vehicles, because those are the toys we have. But we're just going down to the corner drugstore. No, ship, plane, helicopter.
That's why, and with this unprecedented deal, I mean, that's why I always push back on people to say, oh, that show is just a toy commercial, because what is it? I'm just making a guess here. 45, maybe 40% of those episodes didn't even feature Skeletor as the villain. It featured some unknown villain that didn't have a toy, that didn't have a story, and you guys were just expanding the lore. And it was marvelous. And most people don't realize that. They just think it's He-Man, Skeletor sell toys. But you guys were creating, something so much richer, It's so much more elaborate.
Well, and there were times when Mattel would say, "You haven't had any stories with this character, this toy." And I remember when I was on staff as a writer, I started out as a storyboard artist, but when I went into the writing department for the second season of He-Man and the first season of She-Ra, there were a couple times when I had written a script and I'd used, for example, I used a Beast Man and Trapjaw. And my boss said, "Look, Mattel is getting on our case. They have this character called Too Bad, and they want us to use that." And I said, "Well, really, there's nothing intrinsic about in the story I was writing about Beast Man or Trapjaw. There was no particular thing that would do them. So I basically took those two characters out and put Too Bad in and gave Beast Man's line to one head and Trapjaw's lines to the other head." And actually, some of the bickering became rather funny, like, "You weren't there." And he says, "Yes, I was." So where it was reasonable, we did try to accommodate to some extent. It wasn't a combative relationship, but we did kind of keep them at arm's length a bit, as far as we would accommodate where we could, but we weren't going to sacrifice story and character development for yet another variation on the toys. And also for economic purposes, we couldn't keep changing character costumes because that would multiply the amount of drawings, the amount of cells to be painted. It would raise the cost of production to a point where it wouldn't be profitable. And so, that's why, we didn't do battle armor He-Man. We didn't do a bunch of other things. We kept it pretty, it had to stay a certain way because otherwise it would be cost prohibitive. We couldn't have produced it.
Yeah, I always go back to Man at Arms. If you remember, the action figure had armor on one side of the body, but the Filmation version put armor on both sides of the body, so guys can actually flip.
Exactly.
And reuse from him walking left to right and right to left without having to create brand new artwork for it. And but as a kid, I never understood why Man at Arms had armor on one side of his body. Anyway, I understand it now. You have a weapon in one hand and you're kind of shielded on the other side of your body, and you have free range of motion not weighing down your arm. But as a kid, I'm like, why is he armored on just one side of his body? It makes no sense. But all right, but you were mentioning your career, so let's go back. Here you are, a young guy. You want to get into a career of animation, and you're inspired. I remember you saying you're inspired by productions like Disney's Sleeping Beauty.
Yes, that was when I was in high school. I remember that Sleeping Beauty had been re-released to the theaters. It was made in the 50s. Mm-hmm. And this is now late 60s. Right. And up till then, I hadn't seen a Disney animated feature in the theater. I'd only seen clips and things on TV in black and white. And when I went to the theater and saw it, I was just blown away. The quality of the artwork was just so impressive. And that's when I look back to, that was when that spark happened. I was drawing and doing art myself and trying to get better at it and that sort of thing. But that one really, really inspired me. Now, later, go through college, art school and all that. I moved to Los Angeles. I wanted to become a Disney artist. That was my youthful goal. And I remember they were gracious. They gave me an interview, and I was on the lot. And as I was walking down the hallway, and I see the actual artwork on the walls, and I know what's in my portfolio, and I go, I am not in this league. I am not up to this level of perfection. But I'll tell you
that must have been heartbreaking at the time, right?
Well, yeah, it was tough. It was tough.
It's an awful reality check.
Yeah, but I'll tell you, they were very kind. Ed Hansen was the, and I'll have to double check that, but he was the president of the animation department, or head of the animation department. And I had a one-on-one interview. They don't do that anymore. They have you don't even get to go in. You just have to drop off your portfolio, and then a whole team of them criticizes the work and lets you know if you made it or not.
Right.
But Ed talked to me. He showed me examples. He could see where I was trying to copy their characters and trying to learn how to draw their characters, but he was actually looking for a original drawing to see what I could do, not just what I could copy. And in fact, what he did was he came around his desk and took my portfolio and spread it out all over the floor. And we got down on the floor, and he was talking about the different pieces.
Wow.
What was good, what needed work, and so on. And he told me, really what you need to do is you need to get your chops in life drawing. You need to know how to draw a human figure. If you can draw the human figure accurately, everything else is easy. And I said, well, should I? And he told me what schools he recommended. And I said, well, should I take any cinema courses or any animation courses? He goes, no, they'll just mess you up. Learn how to draw the human figure. If you get good enough, we hire you. We'll teach you animation.
You know, as a I dare say artist, but when I used to be into art, anatomy, that was always such a struggle for me, you know. And you would look at like paintings like Frank Frazetta, and you go, wow, I am never going to capture anatomy like that man does, you know.
You can.
Well, yeah, that's that. Yeah, those are some lofty goals right there. But you know, my and a fluid pose, you know, my poses always look like they were just posing for a camera, you know. And even if I was trying to simulate like range of motion, that somehow they were stiff, you know.
It is hard. So I did take life drawing classes at Art Center College of Design in Pasadena, California. And well, private school is costly, and I ran out of money really fast. So I was actually taking night classes and working as a busboy in the cafeteria during the day. So, but I took the classes, and I had a really good art teacher, life drawing. All of the teachers at Art Center were working professionals, not just academics. They were working professionals that also taught. And you know, he told me things like, "There's no such thing in nature as a straight line. You know, if you draw a straight line down for a leg, you miss the point."
Yeah, that's good.
And so I learned a lot from that. I tried several times to get into Disney, and I either was bad timing, they weren't hiring at the moment, or one thing or another. And what happened was I came in contact with an art director at Filmation. His name is Bob Klein.
Oh, was that the frame store? I heard this story. Like you were working at an art frame store?
I was working at a store called Aaron Brothers Art Marts. And they were bought some years ago by Michaels, which you might be more familiar with. That's no. And it was picture frames, art supplies, and you know, miscellaneous stuff.
Just like what Michaels is today.
Yeah. Very, very much so. Only half the store was picture frames, and not so much crafts. Like Michaels has got a lot more crafts. At any rate, he came in to frame some animation art that he had, and of course, I got real excited. And
were they cells?
They were cells. They were original drawings. They were concept art, which I really got excited about. And so I'm talking to him, and he said, well, he worked at Filmation.
Yeah. And
it turns out that he said, you might want to check him out because I think they might need some extra help. This was 1981. And Filmation had sold, I think, 5 or 6 series, and the most they'd ever sold in 1 year. and they needed more people to do this, especially in storyboard. Now, the way it had been described to me all through and things I'd read is you had to work your way up to that. You had to start out as a lowly in-betweener, become assistant animator, become an animator, then maybe move into storyboards. You had to kind of work your way up the ladder.
Right.
So the idea of applying for storyboard, like starting at one of the top levels, well, that was intimidating. And but I said, okay, well, I'll give it a try. And I took some time and I drew out some story. I created a story and drew out a storyboard of a space battle in my sketchbook. You know, I don't know if this will work, but I'll try it. And I called the storyboard supervisor, Carl Gears, and arranged for an interview. And so I went in there, showed him my work, and he goes, "No, that's pretty good. Looks like you know film, you know storytelling, but your drawing is not quite up to our level. So, but here's what I want to do: is I'm going to give you a test, and you do this test, and I'll decide based on what you come up with." And so he gave me one page of a Lone Ranger script. And I said, "You want me to storyboard this page?" He goes, No, just this one line. Well, that's one line. I go, "Give me as many camera angles, as many poses, anything you can think of to describe that one sentence." And he gave me some storyboard paper. I go, "Okay." So I went home, and I remember the line. Apparently, a farmer was about to lose his farm, and the Lone Ranger and Tonto are giving him the bad news. And the line I had to illustrate was, "The farmer's shoulders slump in resignation." Okay, so I staged it on the front porch of the farmhouse with the farmer sitting on the porch, wringing his hands, and the Lone Ranger leaning against the post, and Tonto behind him. I go, "That's one." And then I did a close up of his wringing hands. I did a whole bunch of different things. There were 9 panels per page.
And how large was the page?
Little small squares. And
so it was like 8.5 by 11.
8.5 by 11, because it makes it for easy Xeroxing.
Okay.
So nowadays they do it differently, but later on we got to do bigger, and then they shrink it down for distribution.
Right.
But anyway, they were small, and I did 9 panels, different angles. And I did it in 20 minutes. And I looked down and go, "Oh, there's no way he's going to hire me with this." So I grabbed a second sheet and I did 9 more panels. Put them inside the farmhouse, leaning against his fireplace. The farmer's wife in the background crying. Anything I could think of.
So you did 18 poses of this farmer slumped, upset that he's losing his farm.
Yeah, anything I could think of. And so.
Do you still have that?
I don't have it. No, I don't. I wish I did. At any rate, I called up Carl and I said, "Okay, I done. Can I bring it in?" He goes, "Don't bother me today. Come in tomorrow." Okay. So because it was that morning, I did it that afternoon, and I called him before the end of the day. And so I came in the next day. It was a Friday, and I handed it to him. He took one look at it, didn't even study. He just took one look and says, "You're hired." I said, "You're kidding." He goes, "No, I've given this test out to a dozen guys, and the most I ever get is 3 panels. You gave me 18. Oh. And
I was going to say, I'm trying to imagine the 18 different poses you came up with,
I remember some of them, and then the producer, Don Christensen, comes in and sits down next to Carl's desk. And Carl says, "Hey, Don, this is the guy I was telling you about." you were talking to the producer about me?
Mm.
And he showed him my work. And he goes, I see what you mean. This guy sure knows film. Too bad he can't draw worth crap. Yeah. I died just then.
That's
he
much.
Looks at Carl and looks at me and says, hire him if you want to. And he gets up and leaves. And he's in a Hawaiian shirt, Bermuda shorts, and flip-flops, right? He leaves. And Carl says, well, he kind of put me in a pickle. You could certainly do the job, but your drawing is not quite up to our level.
Right.
I'll tell you what, I'm going to put you on probation for 2 weeks. You assist another storyboard artist and learn the ropes. And in 2 weeks, we'll see whether you stick, And I said, thank you. That's great. That I can't thank you enough. So I'm all jazzed. I start the next Monday, and I worked very hard and everything else. And at the end of the 2 weeks, I went into his office and I said, well, Carl, do I come back Monday? And he looks at me like I have two heads. He goes, what are you talking about? He goes, and I reminded him about his probation. He goes, oh, you would have known a long time ago if you were in trouble.
Oh, you think he could have told you? You probably were on pins and needles for 2 weeks.
Oh, especially that second week.
Yeah,
and
sure.
And I was 25 then. It was 1981. I'm 25 years old. I finally had my big break into the business. And we were working on the first show I worked on was the New Adventures of Zorro, which was really good.
Yeah, that was good.
Black Star was being done that year. Worked on Hero High and Shazam, Captain Marvel, and the characters. Hero High was basically...
Oh, was that live action? Oh, it was.
Kids Superpower Hour. It was... The wraparound was like a laugh-in joke.
Yeah.
It was very lame. Hero High was actually a repurposed project that failed to sell. They had pitched the idea to doing the Super Archies because they had done the Archies back in the 60s, but they didn't get it. So basically they took some of the same characters and just redrew them, but it was basically Archies, the superpowers, only Captain California and Glorious Gal and Rex Ruthless was Reggie. So.
One thing I want to say about storyboarding, I know they're going to come after me for not talking about He-Man. We'll get to He-Man soon. But I was trying to explain to someone a while back, I think it was about comics, where being an artist, it's interesting that they needed both of that talent set from you, because being an artist doesn't necessarily mean you can draw comics or basically storyboard. An artist might be a spectacular artist in the world, the next Frank Frazetta, but drawing, amazing figures with realistic anatomy, but with all that talent, it doesn't mean they're capable of logically conveying a story with sequential art. That's two different talents, right? Two different disciplines that not necessarily is joined or synonymous with the other. And I've seen talented artists who actually can't tell a story in sequential panels to save their life, and it's quite jarring. So
I'll even go as far as this. We had some very competent comic book artists who took our storyboard test and could quite do it. It's one thing to do a comic page that tells a story, but they're basically... I'll tell you what, for a comic page that might have 6 panels on it, and that gets you through a sequence, animating that, the storyboard would probably be about 30 panels. In fact, here I can show you. Here's my storyboard for the Cosmic Comet. Now, this is 8.5 by 11. This is the size I had to draw. This is not a reduction. These scenes were cut. But as you can see, even head turns and things. That had to be a separate. It had to be a separate
No.
panel.
Yeah.
And then from here, looking back down, and then her eyes glow. There's 3 drawings to describe. We had to do the beginning, middle, and end of every action. See,
I see. And then the animators would fill in the blanks. You're basically
well, so this we had to describe what was actually going to happen.
right.
So for in this scene up here, we have the energy going around the gate to Castle Grayskull, and then we have a cutaway to Evelyn with her eyes glowing, and then we finish the sequence with the door opening. Oops, and voila, there's He-Man on Battle Cat.
Yeah.
So that's.
Rob, did you ever? I mean, animation has your heart, but were you ever interested in getting into filmmaking? I mean, like James Cameron. Well, he draws his own storyboards, but I mean, doing storyboards for live action movies. Were you ever interested at all?
Oh yes, I was very much so. I in fact, before He-Man, between 81 and 83, or I think it was after the 81 season, a buddy of mine, Victor Kelly, and I went up to Lucasfilm, and we applied to be storyboard artists at Lucasfilm. We wanted to be doing Star Wars and Indiana Jones and all that, but didn't quite make that.
Steven Spielberg might do his own storyboards now.
No, he has others do it.
Oh, he does? Okay.
Mm-hmm. He may thumbnail things out, but he has artists do them in a more rendered fashion, or at least back then.
So you touched upon that time before He-Man, and maybe we'll get into that real quick, regarding the Filmation company. And then I promise we'll get back to He-Man. But the state of the industry was getting pretty bad right before He-Man went into production. And I know Filmation didn't have, current work, I think, for you or for a lot of people, and because so much work was being shipped overseas, putting animators in this country out of work. Their jobs are being shipped overseas to Japan, to China, to the Philippines, to take advantage of cheaper labor and bigger profits. And because of this, there was a big strike then, right? The animators in the United States went on strike. And did you ever think during that time, and you like you said, you went to Lucasfilm, that in regards to future opportunities in animation, that maybe it was time to change your line of work, that there wouldn't be work in the future for you to have?
Oh yeah, but here's the thing. Okay, 1981, I finally break in, get hired by Filmation.
Yeah.
I was unaware that the work was seasonal. Work for 5 months, 6 months maybe, and get laid off. And not because the work, not for personal reasons, but because the production ended. We're not doing anything now, so we don't need you in the studio. And then they would pitch ideas when a series would sell. Then they'd hire the different artists, animators, and background painters, and so on, as the production cycle would go through there. So yes, and then in 1982, our union went on strike protesting the runaway production. In fact, Lou Scheimer, head of Filmation, picketed his own studio.
What? Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
Because he was all for. We were the last studio that everything was under one roof. That everything from the writing through all the character animation, through the background painting, the camera work was done there. It was all done in-house.
You guys were a cartoon factory.
We were, and I feel very, very fortunate, very blessed, because on my coffee breaks, we had a morning coffee break and an afternoon coffee break for 15 minutes. I would some of my friends would go smoke, I would go down to the background department and watch them painting Castle Grayskull, watch them painting Snake Mountain, and sometimes go into the camera department and watch them shoot this stuff. And it was a delight.
And you mentioned Lou and picketing, and that's got to be so Lou. I mean, I've heard you knew him. I've heard all these amazing stories about Lou Scheimer. And for anyone who doesn't know, he's the co-founder of Filmation. I mean, of course, you guys know. Like you've heard in other companies where you hear about a boss that proclaims, we really care about our employees, blah, blah, blah. But Lou Scheimer, man, he was the genuine article from what I heard.
Mm-hmm.
And he truly cared and was genuinely trying to do everything he could do to, one, keep the lights on and keep his doors open, and two, keep everyone, all that animation work in-house in the United States, and keep as many employers employed as much as possible. So was Lou the best person like you ever worked for?
He had his faults. He had his flaws here and there. But yes, as far as creative, he came up through the trenches. He was a young animator back in this, late 50s, early 60s. And when he and Norm Prescott and Hal Sutherland founded Filmation, they were basically doing it, trying to form a company that they could actually work at. But they came up through the trenches. They weren't business types that were starting an investment group or anything like that. They were working animators. I'll tell you something else about Lou. He would hire people from multiple generations, new guys like me getting our first start, but they were old guys and older women that worked for the Fleischer brothers back in the Popeye and Superman days in the 40s that were working. Mm-hmm. And I remember there was this one fellow, one animator, his name was Jack Ozark. He was been in the business 40, 50 years. And he worked for Fleischer. He had done work on Popeye and all that. And I remember he walked by my office when I was storyboarding, first season. Yeah, it was first season He-Man. And he just stopped. And he pointed at my desk and he says, "I can't do that." I go, "What do you mean, Jack?" He goes, "I'm an animator. I can make drawings. I can make characters that you believe in. I can make you laugh. I can make you cry with how I draw these characters. But I can't make sense of that out of those scripts and tell a story." And I went, "Wow." I said, well, Jack, it's a good thing Lou hired both of us, because I can't do what you do.
That's something, I heard there was a reunion, I don't know, 10 years ago. Did you go to that 15 years ago or something?
I was unable to do that.
Okay.
But I have been to Los Angeles a few times for PowerCon, which is a big He-Man, Thundercats, another convention.
Right.
And that was reunion for me, because first one I went to was 2012, and I got to meet some of my old co-workers that I had worked with back in the 80s, including Vic Dalkelly, which I mentioned, I mentioned going to Lucasfilm with. He actually was my office mate in storyboard. We had two desks in each little office, and he also was my best man at my wedding. So we're old friends. We got reunited. Larry DiTilio, one of the great writers of Filmation, got to see him, and we got reacquainted and hung out for a while, and just got to. And I was back there, I think, I don't remember. It was 2013. The last time I was there was 2021. That was the last one in Los Angeles. And they moved it to Columbus, Ohio now. But it's now just a general toy convention. It's not He-Man centric anymore. But Yeah, so I've been able to reconnect with a lot of my friends, and I do run into them time to time. Animator Tom Cook and I will sometimes be booked for the same conventions.
That's great. I don't know if it's it's just a legend or stories, but I don't know. Lou seems like almost in a way, at least in regards to the way he tried to keep animators here in the country. Because he certainly could have made more profits sending that work overseas. But you remember that movie, It's a Wonderful Life, right?
Mhm.
That Christmas classic. I can't help but make a comparison when, Jimmy Stewart as George Bailey, realizing that at the end of the wonderful story, he's not as rich as he could have been, but with all the friends he has, all the people he helped, and the
Mhm.
hearts he touched along the way, that he was truly, the richest man in the world, kind of thing.
Mhm.
And it always, maybe I'm overextending, but it always gave me that kind of feeling. I mean, not.
Well, it's funny you should mention that because I always thought that Lou Scheimer sounded exactly like Jimmy Stewart in his voice.
Yeah.
Now you wouldn't hear that when he does Randor or when he does
Orko.
Orko, but he had that twang. It just and he tall man, probably 6'4", 6'5", tall guy, and uh, but yeah, I would every time I'd hear him talk, Jimmy Stewart would pop in my mind. So
So, all right, we better get back to E-Man. So you worked on Zorro, you did all the stuff at Filmation, and then the strike happened. You weren't with Filmation for a while, and then suddenly, when He-Man and the Masters of the Universe started production, you were eventually called back to work to do storyboards,
mhm.
and you all were doing like a crazy amount of work because He-Man and the Masters of the Universe was the first animated series to launch first run programming Monday through Friday,
Mhm.
which required 13 weeks of new programming, 5 days a week, 65 new
Episode.
episodes total, which seems like a gargantuan volume of work.
It is. It
Now,
was.
now, do you know whose idea this was? Was it Lou Scheimer's? Did he convince Mattel that syndication was the right way to go, or
I don't recall exactly. I certainly wasn't privy to those conversations, but one of the reasons was they saw the handwriting on the wall after '82 that the networks were diminishing their programming on Saturday morning. There used to be three networks, like 4 hours of cartoons
Hmm.
on three networks. So now it was like 3 hours or 2 hours. One network, I don't remember which one, maybe it was excuse me, NBC, that decided to go with the Today Show instead and dropped all their cartoons.
That was a
Well,
sad day.
they saw Lou Scheimer and the others saw that that was happening, and uh, I don't know the exact process of and what was discussed, but they came up with the idea of going to first run syndication. There was already an afternoon block of cartoons, usually all reruns from Saturday morning shows.
Yeah.
And the unique thing, the innovative thing they did was they made it a barter deal with the individual television stations. In syndication, you have to go to a syndication convention where all the programming directors from all the different local stations come to buy programming. And whereas when it's a network, you're just pitching it to the network and then it goes out.
Hmm.
What they did was instead of saying, well, this is how much it costs to buy our show, they said, we're going to give you the show for free. There are 8 minutes. I think at that time we had 22-minute episodes, and I think there was 8 minutes in a half hour available for commercial time. And this is what they said: we're gonna split it.
Hmm.
You let us sell 4 minutes of advertising, and you guys get 4 minutes of advertising to sell in your local market.
Wow.
And they went, really? It was brand new, hadn't been done before, to my knowledge. It hadn't been done. And so that made it very attractive. Free first run programming. And that's an easy sell for local local advertisers saying, hey, this is first run programming. And our company, Group W Broadcasting, was the distributor, and they would sell basically they would sell national ads for the 4 minutes, and the local stations would sell local ads. So you'd see a mix of serial and a mix of local stores.
Right. Wow. I never knew that. I never knew those were free, so to speak.
Yes, and what happened was that the first season of He-Man, we had the entire field to ourselves. There was no other first run stuff, and the ratings were sky high, and it was extremely profitable for everybody concerned. Well, it didn't take long for the other studios to get on board, and by that was 1983.
Yeah.
By 1984, the other studios were pitching their stuff, and it had a bit of a diluting effect. Anything that Filmation did after that still did well, but never as good as first season He-Man, because there was no competition at all. And by the next year, you had Thundercats and Turtles and G.I. Joe, and you had Transformers, had a lot of content.
Yeah, I remember that. I remember it suddenly got saturated. First, it was just like Bugs Bunny and Woody Woodpecker, and then He-Man,
Mm-hmm.
And then, yeah, you're right. It did get saturated quickly. And there's a lot of Japanese animation as well that was dubbed.
It was starting to come in. Saturday morning, you saw Mighty Orbots on Saturday morning. There was one called Reboot. And then now we're getting to about mid 80s, about 85, 86. You start getting things like Galaxy Rangers.
Yes.
And then the direct one, which was Robotech, that came in.
I remember G-Force, and then Voltron as well.
Voltron and all kinds of So it just avalanche.
All right, so then let's get into your storyboarding. You storyboarded what I guess you didn't know at the time would become such iconic episodes, which really, in a way, at least this is my opinion, you co-directed it in a way. Episodes like the Cosmic Comet, House of Shakoti, Part 2, The Dragon's Gift, right?
Yeah, Dragon's Gift was my first He-Man board. It's interesting, the Cosmic Comet has a production number of 1. It was the first script assignment, but because we really didn't know what a He-Man show was going to be about, that one went through the most rewrites, and it didn't enter into production till much later. And so even though it has the number of episode 1 in its identification, it was probably about a third to halfway through the season before it aired.
Now, I have a question regarding the stock system that I'll table for a moment, but do you have any interesting memories or anecdotes about your work while storyboarding these epic stories? I think you did the Return of Grandmere too.
Yes.
Like which ones came easy, or which was a struggle, or anything?
Well, yes. The first season, I was very fortunate. I got a lot of Larry DiTilio scripts, and they were very good.
Yeah.
Dragon's Gift, House of Shakoti, Return of Grandmere. And in the case of Grandmere, a lot of times what we would get the script at the same time as the character designers would get the script. And so we'd go ahead and be working, and I drew my own version of Grandmere, which I patterned after the Dragon and Dragon Slayer.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And so I think, man, really fierce. And it was about halfway through, it took about 4 weeks to draw a storyboard, and and sometimes another week or two to do the revisions that the director would want. Well, I was halfway through Dragon's Gift when the first drafts of the character models came out, and I was given Granomir, and here he is, this pot-bellied dragon with a dumb Viking helmet on. I did not like him at all. And
no,
at that time,
I actually have him up there.
I could see him up there. At the time, I didn't like it. I liked mine better. And part of my own kind of passive aggressive thing, I stubbornly drew my dragon all the way through. Now, I knew quite well it would not continue that way. As soon as it went to layout department, they would draw it with the right character design.
Right.
When I had to do Return of Granomir, I continued my rebellion, and I still drew without the helmet.
Wow, Rob, you were stubborn.
Yes, I was very stubborn. But well, and I'll tell you a story about an anecdote about I think it was Return of the Granomir. Hal Sutherland was a line producer at that time, and he called me into his office after I turned to my first draft, and there was one particular scene that he wanted drawn a certain way, and it's Granomir sitting on the edge of his little pit, and he wanted an attitude, and he says, "Here, let me show you." And so he pulls back, does this, and puts his knee up he opens a drawer on his desk and puts his knee up. He says, "This is how I want Granomir to look in that shot." And I got out my pencil and I was sketching him really fast.
Okay.
But okay. And I went back and did it. So that was kind of fun because he, produced a model for me, and I said, well, if I drew this right, that won't get changed.
That is funny that you had a model for Granomir.
he wanted the attitude.
Yeah.
And
and that kind of captured it, and not to fly off on a tangent here, but John Irwin as Granomir, to me was just amazing because I couldn't tell who was him. I mean, there's certain characters, this, that you can tell immediately who is voicing him. Like the mask character from the House of Shakoti, Part 1, I could immediately hear it was Man at Arms with like this reverberation. That's Alan Oppenheimer's voice. Granomir, I couldn't tell at all. John was so different sound. He was so talented. Were you friends at all with John? You said you actually, saw them sometimes, record. Everything was done in house.
Yes. No, they kind of we were to keep to our desk and do the work. But I never met John. I met Alan. And in fact, Alan and I have crossed paths a few times. We've been on panels together at conventions. But
actually, you brought up Alan, Rob. I heard something scandalous about you. I heard that you weren't a fan of Alan Oppenheimer as Skeletor. Say it isn't so, Rob.
Well, I have come to love his interpretation, but at the beginning, again, a lot of times we were starting doing things before voices were recorded, before characters were designed past a certain point, and a lot of us were, really excited about doing this sword and sorcery techno barbarian thing, and we had, ambitions of doing Lucasfilm level stuff, but we had so a lot of us, looked at the design for Skeletor and were thinking deep bass, menacing Darth Vader sound.
Sure.
And when first we would get copies of the vocal recordings on audio cassette, so we could just play them and hear them. And the first time I heard Skeletor in this nasally voice, yeah, it didn't hit us right because the expectation was deep bass and menacing.
I will kill you. Yeah, something like that. Yeah. Yeah, I get that. I mean, I
But
guess
that was the first impression. That was the first impression. Very soon, I grew to love his interpretation, and we had a lot of fun with it. Although I remember one time when I was writing a script, I think it was for Capture the Comet Keeper, second season He-Man.
Mhm.
I tried to reintroduce his villainy and take him back to being more menacing, because by that time he was being played for laughs most of the time,
Right.
and uh, I got reprimanded because I made him a little bit too evil, and boss wrote. Arthur Nadell, the head of the writing department, wrote a note on my script, and he goes, "Good grief, Rob, he's not the devil." And I said, "I'm sorry, the skull face and the ram's head staff kind of fooled me."
Well, in all fairness, what you were sequelizing, the Cosmic Comet, I don't think he was humorous himself in that episode. You know,
Mhm.
I think his henchmen around him. But so you think, at least in the beginning, you would have preferred that voice you saw in the commercial. You saw the commercial, right? That they
Mhm.
used to,
Yes,
and yet I will get you. You know, I mean, that was more guttural, more what you were at least imagining at first.
Mhm.
Yeah.
That's a at that time, again, in my 20s, that's what thought it would be, and a lot of us were comic book fans and everything else. We're very much into the making it as dramatic. What we didn't know at the time was that there was a lot of pressure to keep violence out of children's programming.
Yeah.
And uh, looking at the character designs, the toy designs, everything looked very dark. And there was a conscious decision to lighten it up somewhat, to make it more palatable to families, and so that the parents would let their kids watch it. If it gave them nightmares, they wouldn't watch the show.
Yeah. Good point.
So that was the thinking of the time.
Hmm. All right. So moving forward to, I just mentioned that commercial, and it would have been amazing to see animation like that commercial. But I guess we'll move right into that stock system. So, in order to do those 65 episodes in a economical fashion, all in house at Filmation, that cartoon factory, so to speak,
Mhm.
the major cost saving measures was repeat backgrounds, limit the range of movement, like the mouth talking and eyes blinking, and then to reuse or repeat animation, reuse stock animation of characters walking, running, jumping, and landing, so you can reuse over and over again
Mhm.
against different backgrounds and different episodes to save money. Hence the Filmation stock animation system. So I'm not at all an expert like you or an expert in animation history. So I was just curious, do you know, to your knowledge, was this like stock system in industry first, or did the stock animation system of this magnitude occur before He-Man and the Masters of the Universe?
Every studio reused stuff to a certain extent.
Okay.
Even Disney. You will find, for example, in Disney's Robin Hood in the early 70s, they reused animation from the Jungle Book.
Oh, I saw that, like the rotoscoping, right?
Yeah.
Walking. Oh,
There was any number of things. It was what Filmation did was really systematize it. I mean, really came up with a whole production process. It
yeah.
served a number of purposes. For one, it kept their lead animators employed, because what happened is that before the scripts were finished, before storyboards were done, before they would get the assignments to actually animate for an episode, there could be months where they were out of work.
Right.
With the stock system, we knew, okay, we're going to need close-up dialogue shots, we're going to need walks and runs and certain things, and that could be done in advance. So that kept our lead animators employed, and certain heads of the departments employed, while a series was gearing up for production. it also had the economic standpoint of not having to redraw the same thing in exactly the same way just for the sake of doing it.
Right.
But what I'll tell you, that worked very well when we were doing 13 episodes, which is what a network purchase would be. If we were doing Saturday morning, 13 episodes, boom, stock system was fine. Very soon we found the limitations of the stock system was that we needed some other stuff. And this is something that happened with the storyboard artists. We would go down and see dailies. They'd shoot the stuff on film, they'd go to the lab, process the film, and then we'd watch the dailies. Generally one storyboard artist a day would get to go. There wasn't room in the conference room for all of us. And we'd come back saying, I wish I would have had that scene where He-Man rips open this wall. I needed that in my show. But that wasn't in the system. Well, what we started doing was taking our storyboards and going through them and saying, making copies and saying, okay, this scene is a good scene that can be repurposed. And we'd cut it out and we'd paste it into a notebook. And we made this little catalogs, and we called them same as, because if you knew, let's say you're doing your own episode and you have He-Man do something and he's going to do it again 3 minutes later, you'd say, this scene 75 is the same as scene 23. And you copy and paste it in there. And that would be an instruction to the director and the animator to take the one thing and then reshoot it against this different background. And that was same. There was stock that was made beforehand, and then there was same as that was basically salvage work that we take from episodes. But we started doing it more deliberately. You might call it data mining. We were art mining. We were looking for good stuff. Because here was the thinking. The more reusable stuff that looked good, then, and we tell this to the animators and the directors who said, well, you're trying to put us out of work if we don't have anything to draw. I said, no. Spend the same budget money and make the artwork, the new artwork that you do for each episode, that much better. Take it up a notch, because these reusable shots will save your budget line. And that happened. And at a certain point, actually, I think it was during Filmation's Ghostbusters, which was after She-Ra. Yeah. We were seeing the handwriting on the wall as far as all the work going overseas, and we were trying to stay alive as a company. I took myself out of creative work and did nothing but researching and cataloging good animation that we could reuse. And they eventually gave me a staff, and we put things together and put these. There'd be like one 3-inch binder of stock, and we'd have like about 6 binders of same as.
Wow.
And other stuff. It was a pain, but I think we probably gained a couple of years because of that.
And this might be controversial, what I'm saying, in the realm of He-Man and Masters of the Universe, but because I know it was perceived that the stock system kind of hurt the overall viewing experience of He-Man and Masters of the Universe, especially when you compare it to other cartoons that were made overseas, because the labor was so cheap on those cartoons.
And they got paid by the piece, by the way.
Oh, really? Oh, wow.
Well, some got paid by the piece, some by the hour, but the ones that were paid by the piece, the more they animated, the better they got paid.
All right, so there you could really raise the bar in regards to the amount of dynamic animation, and this is your competition compared to the He-Man cartoon. So I might be in the minority, but as a child, I looked forward to seeing the repeated animation in He-Man. I couldn't wait to see my favorite stock scenes over and over again as a child, like He-Man punching at the camera. For me, this was part of its charm in a weird way. So to this viewer, became a strength, not a weakness.
Oh, well, thank you. The love of the familiar, if you will. I'll tell you so. I remember, I don't know if it was Tom Cito or Tom Tataranowitz, but one of the storyboard artists, when they was directors, decided to put in every version of this one stock. And it's the one, the one where Tila drops into scene, back to camera.
From the rear.
Yes. And he put in like a half dozen of those. Of Tila, of He-Man, of Skeletor doing. And I remember Lou said, I think it had to be Tom. Well, it was one of the Toms. And of course, it showed up in dailies. Blink, blink. He said, "You're killing me here. What is that?"
What a great gag. Oh, speaking of gags, and if you don't feel comfortable answering this, please don't. But just generally, I don't understand, and I would love to understand. The animation history has this long history of, I guess, animators or artists inserting phallic symbols into cartoons for all through different companies and productions. It's like secretly in the background. What's the story of that? I mean,
well, I don't know about that specifically, but I do know that different artists would try and sneak things in, one thing or another. For example, in some He-Man backgrounds, some Skeletor backgrounds, you'll find little figures from Black Star in the background.
That's cool, actually.
What I did in my first year, we were doing, I was doing Hero High, and I had gangsters in a car doing a getaway, and I put a plastic statue of Al Capone on the dashboard in my storyboard, and it made it through. The background artist put it in there. So we'll just do some fun stuff like that. If anything was inappropriate, and I would say certain body parts, if it was caught, it was taken out.
Okay.
But it didn't even happen at Disney's. The infamous shot in Rescuers. There's
the windows, right?
The window scene with the centerfold in it. So different people try and slip things through. Generally, if it's caught, it's taken out.
Some people think they have seen what I described in Trala and some background shots, some of the, lack for a better word, vegetation or in the shape. You know the big story where even on that Little Mermaid box art, where they removed that. So it seemed to be like this industry gag, and I was just always curious about it. I guess it was just people.
I'd have to say you'd have to talk to the artist that actually did it, because in some cases it could be unintentional. In some cases, in other cases it may be intentional. The fact that it made it through meant that not everybody saw it that way when they, saw the final product. It didn't hit them that that's what it was. Yeah.
I also remember, since we're on the issue, they inserted something. Some piece of nudity in Who Framed Roger Rabbit, but no one could tell. How many is it? 24 frames per second film. Mm-hmm. No one can tell. But then once people got laser discs where you can go frame by frame by frame, just like some other Disney productions and stuff, that's when these little hidden nuggets came out, and then controversies, ensued. So
yeah, there were always individuals who like to sneak something in.
Yeah, well, that's interesting. So, all right, so let's move real quick to the writing department, because you moved to the writing department. So somewhere in the production of season 2, even in Masters of the Universe, you felt some scripts were becoming, I think, repetitive and maybe, dare I say, stale a little.
Yes, because of the volume needed. We had staff writers and we had freelance writers. The freelance writers didn't always get it. they didn't have the history with the show, and they would just plop in a generic adventure story. Some writer was notorious about taking the same script and just changing the names of it, whether they were shooting, they're saying it to this studio or that studio. They just changed their name so they wouldn't have to work so hard. But I had gotten spoiled in first season He-Man with Larry DiTillio scripts, like I said.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I got a few less than enjoyable shows to work on. And the one that really got my dander up was Fisto's Forest. It was not good at all. And I had material. I had the writer's guide. I had layouts of Castle Grayskull and the Royal Palace up on my wall from the background department. And, there's such a wealth of stuff that isn't explored. A lot working in the same story with the different people. People get in trouble by a villain or by a natural disaster, and He-Man has to save them again and again and again. And so I pitched an idea to the writing department because I wanted Larry to write it for me, so I'd have a good story, good script aboard. And Arthur said, Larry's busy. And he said, "Do you want to write it?" I said, "Me?"
So this never dawned on you before, actually.
Well, I had pitched an idea before once, but
was it for you to write it or for someone else again?
Well, I had actually, what happened was before I got hired back as a storyboard artist for first season He-Man, I pitched a script idea to Arthur, trying to get into the writing department.
Oh, okay.
So I did try once. What happened with this first pitch idea? It was, what if somebody fell into the bottomless pit around Castle Grayskull and witnessed the power of Grayskull when He-Man transformed
into the abyss? Yeah.
And so Arthur said, "Why don't you try it?" So I went home that night. I was boarding this awful Fisto's Forest during the day, and I was working on this Abyss script at night on my little brother typewriter. And in the process, you had to write a premise first, which was what I just said, a little 2-sentence description. Mm-hmm. Then if that got the green light, then you wrote a premise, which is usually about a page and a half, telling the basic story. If that got greenlit, then you would do an outline, which is about 4 or 5 pages, which is everything that happens. This happens, and this happens, and this happens. Here's the act break. This happens, and this happens. And once that is agreed upon, then do a first draft script, second draft script, polish, and so on.
Okay.
My first effort into the abyss was to have Skeletor trying to get into Grayskull, and in the ensuing battle, he throws or knocks Teela into the abyss. And I had him actually gain entrance into Castle Grayskull, and Sorceress finds out that Teela's fallen into the abyss because of him, and of course she's furious.
Sure.
And I had my favorite line. Skeletor says, "What are you, her mother?"
Oh, that would have been great.
Arthur made me take Skeletor out. He said, "We have had so many episodes of Skeletor trying to get us Grayskull. Let's just do something else."
So you came up with was it Pookie?
Well, yes. Basically, there's no villain in Into the Abyss.
Mm-hmm.
And I also used it to kind of explore some more things about Adam. And the script was too long. I had some things that had to be taken out, but overall, I was pretty happy with it. And Arthur liked it, and he goes, "You got another one?"
That's awesome.
Sure.
Affirmation.
And then I came up with Not So Blind, because I knew a blind. I had a friend who was blind at my church, and so I thought, okay, I'll do a blind story.
Now that episode I just love. That's another one you don't have a villain in the story, But but
And
it was still suspenseful, and it was still it was so good. I'm sorry, you go ahead.
no, and that's that. I really enjoyed doing that one, and I also explored a little bit more. I had the kids at the beginning asking the storyteller, why doesn't He-Man just smash his face, Skeletor's face, and get away with things? But that turned out to be a pretty good story. I got to use Ram Man, who I had a lot of fun with from House of Shikoti. In House of Shikoti Part 2, Larry had Ram Man mispronouncing Shikoti's name throughout the entire episode. He'd call her Shabooti, Shapoopy, and I would laugh every time I read the line. So when I did Not So Blind, I brought Ram Man in. I had the boy touch his face, trying to see what he looks like. And he goes, Ram Man, where's your neck?
You know what that felt? That felt kind of like meta, because that's what all the kids were asking. Like, where's your neck? Why can't you? How do you turn your head?
And I said, and he asked the question, and he does this, goes, I know. And then I had him address the fact that he's slow. He goes, I'm not stupid. I'm just slow.
Yeah.
And so that gave me an opportunity to do a little bit of character stuff there. Here's an inside story. I named the boy Loos, Loos, after Lou Scheimer, Lou, capital S, because we had a running joke that when presented with new character designs, if there'd be 3 designs for a character, he'd pick the worst one. And he said, Lou, you're blind. These are better than that. And so that was my inside joke, is making his name, naming him the blind boy after him.
That's great.
But and then Arthur said, these are good scripts. We want you to come on staff. And so I moved from the storyboard department to the writing department for the rest of second season He-Man. Although I spent more time editing outside scripts to get them producible, because a lot of them were some of them were live action TV writers who'd never written for animation before. Okay. They're good writers, but they didn't know the constraints of animation. So, and I was there from a second season He-Man through all of first season She-Ra.
Yeah, I wasn't, as a kid, I kind of got lost and didn't keep up with She-Ra. But I did love that one episode you did that starred Lookie. Lookie Lends a Hand. I love that episode.
That one was an assignment I didn't want at first. What happened was that I didn't like I thought Lookie, it was a gimmick. I didn't like it. I thought it was lame. But Arthur calls me into his office one day and he says, look, we want to do a show about Lookie. I think you can do it. And I go, oh, I don't want. And I whined, I don't want to do it. And he said, I'll tell you what, you can make it a He-Man crossover. You got it. So I went, okay, I'm going to do Lookie, a He-Man crossover. And I came up with the idea of having a device that stopped time.
Yeah.
Which, I mean, I thought, this would be a cost-saving thing, because they only have to do one drawing. And it just fills holes there. And then I started having some fun with that. I thought, okay, well, the time thing would be frozen here, but as it went out, it would just kind of distort things to a certain radius. I said, okay. So, and then I had to have, okay, how can it be defeated? Well, it can only be defeated by someone with a magic. So a magical creature would be immune, i.e. Lookie. So Light Hope drafts Lookie and sends him to Eternia, only because of the distortion with the time stop device. Instead of materializing in the royal palace in Adam's bedroom, he materializes in the throne room of Skeletor in Snake Mountain
and lands on his head,
smashes his face into the table. In fact,
what do you got?
Oh, I did this as a commission.
Wow, that is awesome. He smashed right in there. That is
Yeah,
great.
man, that's taken from the actual video frame, just for reference.
Uh,
And um, and I just had a ball with it.
uh,
And
I could tell. I could tell it was so
and
fun.
now it's my favorite episode. The one I didn't want to do has become my favorite episode.
And I loved how they struggled, both He-Man and She-Ra. You know, they were like it was sword to chain,
Mhm.
not sword to blanket.
No, no.
I didn't mean to bring that up. Sword to chain, and they were just struggling with it, and it was I don't know. It was so suspenseful. It was such a cool scene that this was really something. You could tell this was really something. You know, to fight against time, difficult for them to do. It was just a great.
Well, I wanted them to struggle because trouble with Superman, with He-Man, is that everything's too easy.
Yeah.
And it's like something to be actually a challenge. And so that one had to be unusual, something they hadn't had to deal with before. And the whole thing with that was that he had to hold his sword because that's the magic part.
Yeah.
And as long as he held a sword, he was immune, and that's how he would get Adora to turn to She-Ra. There was one error in the thing that I get called upon every time because one of the gags was we had a running gag with Madame Raz constantly flying into trees.
Yeah. You had the pillow, right?
So I had her frozen there, and the fans would say, "But she and Broom are magical. Why were they affected?" And I go, "Well, you're right about that. I'll give you an excuse and an explanation, but the real reason is I wanted the pedal gag."
Fans will get you every
But
time.
I said, "But you could say this: she's not good at it. She's not an accomplished
There you go.
magic."
They get a, what did Stan Lee call it? He used to give out no prizes or something like that, I think, to comic readers when they would catch like, you know, errors in continuity or something like that. You know, you'd win a no prize.
Yeah, and that's the best I could do. I wanted the gag. I knew I said, I wrapped myself in the corner, but
Yeah,
I want the gag.
that was a great episode. I loved it. So, and then here we are celebrating 40th anniversary. And first, let's talk about this jersey you're wearing. I mean,
Yeah, I've been teasing everybody with this. This a couple of months ago, I was at a convention and a fan walked up in one of these jerseys. And I said, "Where did you get that?" This is a hockey jersey for the Grayskull Battle Cats. And I'll just stand up a little bit so you can see them all. It's really well done. It's got the year that He-Man came out in 1983 as the number. And I don't know if you can see this. Yeah.
He-Man. It's He-Man 83. This is
So I had to have my wife got it for me for an early Christmas present.
Your wife.
So I will have this when I go on to conventions.
Your wife is fantastic, Rob. I don't think my wife would ever buy anything Masters of the Universe. I mean,
I will pass the compliment on to her. I will do a shout out. People want to know this is from Geeky Jerseys.
Geeky jerseys.
And they have an Oracle one and Man at Arms one. They have one Grayskull on it. So, but they're limited. This is one of 300. They have a little number in the on the tag in the back.
Well, if there's any left, I think there's gonna be a run on it starting with me, because seeing it on you, I'm like, oh yeah, I gotta get one. So
yeah, it's very well made.
You know, and this is great, and in celebration of 40 years, because you know, for me, I was surprised that DreamWorks, who currently owns the show, didn't release any fanfare, you know, or any new media for that matter in the United States to coincide with the 40th anniversary. You know, last year we got the Play on Pictures in Germany came out with that spectacular like Blu-ray set that sort of timed with the 40-year anniversary of He-Man itself, the vintage choice, He-Man in general. But as far as I can tell, in regards to the show's 40th anniversary, He-Man and Masters of the Universe, the series, forget a trumpet, there wasn't even a whistle blown by DreamWorks in the honor of
No, there wasn't. I don't think anybody was paying attention there.
No, it's a real bummer because considering, and I have this over here, and I'm sure you have I have 2 of these, especially considering this awesome limited 30th anniversary, DVD set, that came out 10 years ago. I was expecting something for the 40th anniversary.
You would think so. You would think so. Or even that Mattel would do something.
Yes. Well, be honest with you, Mattel did come out. It's just hitting stores now. A new action figure line called the Cartoon Collection. It's an Origins action figure line, and it's based on the Filmation He-Man cartoon. And it's just hitting stores now. And they're sort of in the dimension of the original vintage figures, but they have the Filmation aesthetics and the Filmation faces. And stuff. And I don't think it's as wonderful as you've probably seen the classic figures, right? The Club Grayskull, I love those. I have them all here, and Prince Adam too, and Tila, and Queen Marlena, and those are great. So these aren't as good, but so it seems like Mattel was doing something in celebration. For myself, I picked up another animation cell for myself, just to celebrate. And speaking of animation cells, do you collect them at all, Rob?
I do not collect them. I had many that I had salvaged from Filmation. My time there, I had some, but I've been actually selling them over time. It's kind of like I'm at retirement age now, and I have been distributing things, selling cells and artwork and such that I've held on to for 40 years. I said, it's time for someone else to enjoy them. And so that's what I've been doing, along with, painting these pops, which that's my contribution to the 40th anniversary. I'll show you real quick.
Yeah, that'd be great. Now, do you make these available online, or is just?
I have, but I can't seem to keep them in stock.
Okay.
I'll sell out at every convention. So I have basically what I'll do is if I've got a long stretch between conventions and I still have some, then I'll put them up online. So and put them up, they sell very quickly. So what they are a He-Man pop, and I paint directly on it with liquid acrylic paints, very similar to the method used to make cells, and sign it. And this one I really like. This one is
like a Snake Mountain. Skeletor.
And Skeletor.
Signature. Those are beautiful. Those are done on
a bunch of these.
Yeah.
And what I'll do is before a convention, I'll post on Facebook or sometimes on my YouTube channel. I'll post, this is what I'm bringing to this event. And I'll have He-Man, Skeletor, She-Ra, Sorceress, Stratos. I've got one I've got to do. It's the first time I've found an antenna that I've got to do. So that's my contribution to the 40th.
So before, you were mentioning you sometimes offer this on your website. So can you let everyone know, like your website and your media channels, where people can come find you?
Yes, I've got my website is robertartwriter.com. I think there should be a link. I have an online store where I have pops, original art, like that looky one that I have, and art prints. Everything I do as flat art, I scan, make copies of, and sell as autograph prints. So because a lot of people want something that's signed, and so I have probably about 20 or 30 past commissions that I have prints of, and they're He-Man and She-Ra. There's I've got. Let me show you something. Okay, so yep.
Oh.
So, like for example, there's a
Wow.
He-Man and Adam.
Yeah.
Got a couple of Skeletors.
That's great.
And He-Man and
Orko holding the sword. Oh, Teela and Orko. I love that one. And these are the prints that you offer?
These are prints, and they're Orko and
Battle Cat.
Battle Cat. These are past commissions.
Man at Arms.
There's Adam again.
This is great.
This one was a recent one where someone wanted the twins ×2. And here's the print of the one I showed you framed, and his commission.
Granamere.
With a sorceress.
Love it.
So.
And what did you do the original medium with? Was it
Prismacolor pencils?
Okay. Yeah. Those come out really beautiful. Yeah.
So those things are available
on your website.
Yes, on my website and my online store.
Okay. So I want to beat this tornado here. I did say we were going to wrap this up with that top 10 favorite episodes of He-Man. Again, back in August on our social media pages, we asked this amazing fandom what was their favorite Filmation He-Man and the Masters of the Universe episodes, and they responded, and we compiled the results, and now we have an official 40th anniversary fan top 10. So, Rob, how about I count down the episode list, and each time I mention an episode, I don't know, we both maybe say something really quick, whatever comes to mind, a word, a thought, an episode quote, or even a no comments if it's an episode you didn't like, So does that work with you, sir?
Yeah, that'd be fine. Let's do it.
Okay, here we go. We present the top 10 favorite episodes of He-Man and the Masters of the Universe 40th edition. Number 10, The Dragon's Gift.
That's a favorite. My very first storyboard. My first He-Man storyboard. My first Larry DiTillio script. The first appearance of Granamere. I loved it.
I loved it too, and one of my favorite quotes where he's like, Granamere doesn't fight humans, Granamere wins. Love that quote. Number 9, The Witch and the Warrior.
Actually, I don't remember seeing that one.
So that was the one where Teela and Evil Lynn have to work together. And this was the first time that I ever saw Evil Lynn reveal that she had white, spiky hair.
Oh, yes. I did see that one. Yeah.
And my mom looked like Evil Lynn. I'm not teasing you, Rob. My mom looked like Billy Idol. She looked like, or Susan Powder from that Stop the Insanity, infomercials back in the day. She had that little white, spiky haircut. And I was like, that's my mom. Evil Lynn is my mom. All right. Number 8, To Save Skeletor. This is the one with that Shigora theme. If you remember that one.
Yes. That was a good one.
Yeah. He was like this one-eyed, large, massive chocolate pudding with tentacles that was going to destroy Eternia. Number 7. Let's see if you remember this one. The Rainbow Warrior.
Yes, that was a good one. That had a good backstory. A lot of good character development in that one.
And that was the one that we fans always found out that that a mom always knows, that Queen Marlena hinted that she knew Prince Adam was He-Man. So, great moment. Number 6, Teela's Quest.
Absolutely one of the best. And that's really established the just who is her mother anyway.
Yeah, I remember watching that going, Sorceress is Teela's mom? What? And I don't believe I saw it the first time it ran. Do you know what I mean? So I
Mhm.
actually learned that after watching a lot of different episodes, and it was quite surprising. Okay, number 5, Battle Cats. That was the one where we learn where Adam meets Cringer for the first time, and we get that cute Cringer cub.
Yes. Well, I see a running theme in these episodes so far is there's a lot of they're either origin stories or they are character development
Mm-hmm.
and backstories, which is what I love.
Yeah, yeah. They really dominate this list, but not all of them. And I think the next one will prove that. I think so. Number 4, the Diamond Ray of Disappearance.
The first the first show broadcast, of course.
Yep. I remember, and I had that litany of, like, Skeletor was like explaining the villains, Triclops and Beastman, and okay.
Yeah, that was basically intro to Eternia.
Number 3. Let's see if you know this one. The House of Shakoti. I assume both parts because
Both parts. That was an excellent one. That was a Larry DiTilio script, 2-parter. Don Manuel boarded the first half, and I boarded the second half. The second half was actually the original script, and got expanded into a 2-parter. And part 1 was actually the expansion off of the part 2, and it ran way over budget. Let's see. I just happen to have the storyboard for it right there. Yeah, there we go.
That's awesome. Oh, look at her standing there. Oh,
Yeah.
That was one of the
really
scary,
creepy characters.
Yeah.
Very Lovecraftian. And this one, I don't know if you can see it. Let me see if I can bring it up here close.
Yeah.
See here where it says, ably assisted by Don Manuel, Steve Hickner, Tom Cito, and the rest of the storyboard staff. I was over budget and beyond my deadline. And I had revisions come back where the show was running long. I cut sequences out, and I had to draft other members of the storyboard department to help me finish my revision so we could get it out of the department. So when looking at, I sell copies of the board, and I show them to people. I said, look, this is why the drawings do not match. There were like 5 different drawing styles throughout this because the whole department worked on this to get this out. The other thing was an entire sequence was taken out that they forgot to change one line of dialogue at the end of the episode. There were a lot of obstacles to get to the main room of the pyramid, and one of them involved this flying snake with bat wings. It was called a bat snake, and it went on for several pages of storyboard. Well, that was easy to take out because it didn't advance the story. It was just one more obstacle. But at the end, Ram Man has a line that says, "Yeah, that bat snake thingy." There is no bat snake thingy in the show. They should have cut the line too.
You can just chalk that to being Ram Man. I couldn't. I was amazed when I watched that episode. What struck me the most was when they entered the mouth of Shakoti. The mouth appears, and He-Man bravely. Actually, they all bravely enter it, and I was like, "This is so wild and so odd to see in a He-Man and Masters of the Universe episode."
Yeah, there was a lot of that. When He-Man, when the boy Stanlan is pulled through the door with these tentacles grab him and pull him through the door, and Chakoti's face is on the door, and He-Man slices through the door, cuts her face in half.
Yeah, that was shocking too.
Very shocking. Even though it's stone, it wasn't her real face, but yet visually it was very dramatic.
Mm, it was, and it's no wonder for that. It's on this list.
Mm-hmm.
So, all right, that was number 3. No, two more to go. Number 2, Evil Seed. Another one that had horrific moments and jump scares. There were a couple times there were jump scares with those vines that just would shoot like from the screen of the Gray Skull, right out to the viewer. And it was, you see those things in horror movies. It's intended to make people jump, flinch in their chair. And here it was in the Evil Seed episode. It was amazing.
My favorite part of that was Evil Seed's death scene. He goes on and on, but Tom Cito did that one, and I really liked that.
My favorite moment of that death scene is the moment afterwards when they're all looking at his decrepit body, his corpse, and all you hear is the whistling of the wind, and it's there's no music, and it's just very chilling, kind of like in the House of Shakoti Part 2. In the beginning, when you hear like the wolves, right, howling, I was like, "Whoa, this is chilling," And this is a He-Man episode. It's so good, so good. And finally, number 1, the problem with power. Of course, right? Of course. That's all I can say.
That was written by Bob Ford. He was another one. Followed in my footsteps, going from storyboard to writing. He wrote that as a freelance script, but then actually after I left the writing department after the first season of She-Ra, Arthur brought Bob Forward in to the writing department for the rest of his time at Filmation. So he was one of the top writers.
So, Rob, do you have anything else that you would like to add that we haven't covered, or anything in general you would like to say before we close this out?
Well, first of all, I'm still amazed and highly gratified at the interest in the work that did so long ago. We try to do our best with it, and the fact that it's so appreciated is a great honor. For those who are out and about, keep an eye out. I may be at a convention near you. The next one I've got on my schedule is in March, in Lexington, Kentucky, the Lexington Con, and that's, I believe, the first weekend of March, 7th through 10th of 24.
Okay. All right. Well, first I want to say happy 40th birthday, He-Man and the Masters of the Universe. And that's a wrap all. We want to thank Rob for joining us today. Rob, it's been an absolute honor to have you on. Thank you very much.
Thank you. It's been a pleasure.
And I want to thank this wonderful community out there for listening and watching this podcast. Now, if you enjoyed this show, please show us your support by liking and subscribing to our streams. You can also drop us a line, too, by sending us an email to foreternia@gmail.com. We really do love the feedback regarding Rob's website and YouTube channel. We'll also have links to those pages in this article that is featuring this podcast. And then, as always, please visit us at FORETERNIA.com for all the latest updates and news, as well as our community forum and links to our social media pages like Twitter, well, it's actually X now, Facebook, YouTube, and Instagram, that can help you stay up to date with all of our Masters of the Universe content. So that's it. I would like to thank you all for listening, and let the power return. We'll see you next time. Bye, everybody.